John chapter number 14. Amen. John chapter number 14 today. And you can just remain seated. I'm going to read several verses so you don't have to stand. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me. I love the reason I had Ben put it up in New Living Translation, because I think this is a better translation than the King James on this particular verse right here. He says, there is more than enough room in my Father's home. King James says, let not your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me, for in my Father's house are many mansions. And that's a really bad translation. That's where we've gotten the idea that we're all going to get a mansion when we get to heaven, which has created some terrible eschatology in our world, because people that don't live in mansions here have decided that they would rather leave this world and get to their mansion in that world, and so they've made no commitment to make things in this world better. And that's not what the scripture was really meaning. This is a better translation here. You go back to the original language, and the original language says that in my Father's house there are many dwelling places. This is better, this just breaks that dwelling places down. There's more than enough room. How many of you know that in the Father's house there's room enough for anybody that wants to come in and live? And then Jesus goes on to say, if it weren't true, if this was only for a few people, I would have told you that. But I'm going to prepare a place for you, he said. I wouldn't have told you that I was going to prepare a place. Now, he said, when everything is ready, I'll come get you so that you'll always be with me where I am. And you know the way to where I'm going. So let me back up and say this. I believe in heaven. Because I know some of you are like, Larry doesn't believe we're going to get a mansion. I bet he don't even believe in heaven. I just probably think heaven's going to be different than what you think it is. And I don't know what heaven looks like, but I know that whatever, when all of this is finished, I believe we're going to be with Jesus. Amen. He said, I'll come and get you so that you'll always be with me where I am. And you know the way to where I'm going. And Thomas said, no, we don't, Lord. He's like some people at the refuge. Jesus is preaching, and he starts heckling him. No, we don't know, Lord. We have no idea where you're going. So how can we know the way? And Jesus told him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And no one can come to the Father except through me. If you'd really known me, you would have known who my Father is. From now on, you do know him, and you have seen him. And Philip said, Lord, show us the Father, and we'll be satisfied. And Jesus replied, have I been with you all this time, Philip, and yet you still don't know who I am? Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. So why are you asking me to show him to you? Don't you believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? And the words I speak are not my own, but my Father who lives in me does his work through me. Amen? So on this Father's Day, I just want to talk to you a few minutes from this thought. Show me, show us, show me the Father. Show me the Father. One thing that I have done over my years in ministry, I thank God that I've arrived at this place. I used to preach week in and week out from the standpoint of whatever I did last week, I had to top this week. You talk about pressure. Because I'm just going to be honest with you. There were some weeks I did really well. And the pressure to beat that the next week, that's when you do real well and you're living under that pressure and you realize, man, you leave a church on Sunday and you realize, man, that was a good service. God helped me today. I walked down the road today. As a pastor, what you do is Sunday night, you start thinking about visiting preachers you can call for the next week. Because I'll never live up to that, but if I give them a week between me and that. But I used to live with that pressure, man. How am I going to live up? But in getting older and hopefully maturing in my thought processes and in my ministry approach, I've learned, man, I don't have to try to beat what I did or what anybody else did. last week. I don't have to try to be like anybody else. And my objective here is not performance. And so I'm not going to attempt to dazzle you this morning. I simply want to paint a picture with words and then trust God that the vision will become clear to a lot of you who have made your way here to this place today. I am a firm believer that children learn what they live. Children learn what they live. There was a lady named Dorothy Law Nolte. And Dorothy Law Nolte wrote a poem by the same name, Children Learn What They Live. And it goes like this. It says, if a child lives with criticism, he learns to condemn. If a child lives with hostility, he learns to fight. If a child lives with ridicule, he learns to be shy. If a child lives with shame, he learns to feel guilty. But if a child lives with tolerance, he learns to be patient. If a child lives with encouragement, he learns confidence. If a child lives with praise, he learns to appreciate. If a child lives with fairness, he learns justice. If a child lives with security, he learns to have faith because he believes that everything will be all right. If a child lives with approval, he learns to love himself. And if a child lives with acceptance and friendship, he learns to find love in a world that desperately needs it. I believe that children are a product of what they see lived around them. I believe that fathers have an important role to play. I do not believe fathers are perfect. We have a few in this room that are pretty close. Just ask them. But we aren't perfect. My friend, Dr. Graham, says this. He said, it's amazing. Young men and women, especially young men, though, at age 18, it's amazing to speak to young men at age 18 and hear them reveal from their heart how stupid and dumb they think their fathers are. He said, and then you go back 6 years later at 24 and you talk to those same men. He says, it's amazing to speak to those men and for them to tell you how much their fathers have learned in the last 6 years. I'll let that sink in on you. Because as you grow, I know with my dad, there were, obviously my dad and I, we butted heads a lot when I was a teenager. But when I decided to get married, it was my dad that I picked to be my best man in my wedding. Because really, through my life, there was no one that had stood by me more than my dad. I realize that may not be everybody's experience in here, but I was blessed to have a mom and a dad who stayed together, who fought through the hard times, who instilled in us values that I still carry to this day, who still continue to, even in compromised health and weaknesses, still continue to provide example for me. I was privileged to be able this morning, just before I came out here, to make a phone call and to speak to my dad and to encourage him today and to remind him that I love him and appreciate him for what he has added to my life. But I realize today that much of my molding and much of my making and much of the things that I value and that I see in my life are a direct result. My mom and dad did not always get it right, but I learned what I lived. Many of you in here today learned what you lived. You learned from what you lived and how you lived. And I looked up some statistics this week as I was getting ready for this message, and I looked up some statistics on the extent and the contributors and the consequences of fatherlessness in our culture. And I have to be honest with you, when I began to read those things and I thought, man, I want to make some points on Sunday. I want to talk about the necessity for men to stand up and be fathers. I want to encourage those in in my circle and in my sphere that even if you haven't had the greatest of examples, God is a redeemer, and He can take you and cause you to be more than what your example was. And I want to bring some illustration, and I wanted to bring some points. And as I begin to read the statistics, the things that contribute to, and then the consequences of children being raised in a society where there are fathers who are absent or just not around or whatever, I began to read those things, and man, I got to tell you, I began to get depressed. So I thought here today, I said, rather than read them out loud, read that out loud and make you depressed, or maybe even cause some of you to feel guilt or shame about your current situation or situations that you've come from, I think what I'll do this morning is I'll just highlight the undeniable truths that where there is the absence of a father, the risk for children, it's proven, the risk for children to live in poverty, to become involved in drugs or alcohol, to drop out of school, to suffer from mental and emotional health issues, for boys to become involved in crime, and girls to become pregnant as young teenagers. Where there is no father, those things are exponentially increased. And there's no way that you can dance around that. It's just proven over and over and over, study after study after study through the years. 20 million children as of right now this morning. It's actually 24.1 million is the exact figure that is from the latest study. 24.1 million children. That represents 33% of the children in the United States live in homes that do not have the presence of a father. And millions more live in homes where a male may be physically present but emotionally disengaged. I could go on and on today and break it down across ethnic lines. And Rosanna asked me at dinner last night. We just shared a meal, she and I was telling her a little bit about what I was going to say. And I threw some things out, and her face started turning red, and she got a little nervous. She said, "Are you going to say that tomorrow?" Said, "Yeah, I planned on it unless you think it's a bad idea." And she said, "Well, however you think you want to live dangerously, go ahead." So I'm going to go ahead and say it today because I think sometimes we're scared of truth. But when you break it down across ethnic lines, what you find out is, according to the latest studies, 2018, 58% of black children live without a present father. 32% of Hispanic children live without a present father. 22% of Caucasian children live without a present father. Now, here's the part that she was worried about me saying. So listen to me, if you want to hold on to the notion that there is no privilege in our culture based on your ethnicity, those figures will prove you wrong. Because if poverty, drug abuse, imprisonment, early pregnancy, mental and emotional issues are all at a greater number when there is no father present than across ethnic lines. No wonder Rosanna asked me if I was going to say that. It's quiet in here today, but it's the truth. I think we need to let go of some bias sometimes. Because we come from, listen, it's easy for me to talk about the world that I come from because it's all that I've experienced. But if you don't ever open your mind to believe that other people have different experiences than you, then your way is not the only way. And I'm not talking about the truth of the Word of God. I'm talking about things people experience in their daily lives. How you lived is not how other people have lived. What you've experienced is not what even other cultural groups have experienced. And so for us to hang on to things and get into arguments and political stances over that kind of stuff, to me, is crazy. And here's what I want to say to you today as a church, in this culture, in our community. Here's what I want to say. And I said this to the guys as we were leading them through some studies this week. It is high time that we understand that as people of God, there may be some things around us that are not our fault, but they are our responsibility to bring change into a world. It may not be my fault. I may not have participated in behaviors personally. But there are some things that if I'm going to live in this culture where we are still reaping the effects of decisions that were made years and years ago, then what it is my responsibility to at least begin to listen to people so that we can reshape a culture. Because listen, fatherlessness is not something that started in the 80s. In fact, the truth of the matter is the world, the country that we live in was built largely on the basis early on of separating fathers away from their families. No, you don't want to hear this, but when the people who were in power in this country early on began to bring people from other countries on slave ships to this country to have them do work, we would bring families, but when they brought families to our shores, we would separate families, because if that man was strong, I'll buy him. Well, he has a family over here. They're of no value to me. And so early on, men were separated. Am I doing okay today? Men were separated from their families. And a lot of what has gone on in our culture and our nation is built on the back of fathers being separated from their children. Because how can a child know what a father should or shouldn't be if a father is not even present? In 1965, Lyndon Johnson declared war on poverty. Watch this. And with one signature from his pen, watch, the Great Deal. 1965, Lyndon Johnson, with one swoop of his pen, Lyndon Johnson and his administration incentivized fatherlessness. Because they signed into law that a single mother with children could get more assistance from a government than a family with a father in the home. And so whether we preached it out loud or whether we said it in undertones, what we began to tell our nation was, there's more value in not having a father. And we'll pay you more. Come on. And now we have kept people, we continue to keep people enslaved to a system where they are dependent. Woo, ain't nobody wanting to hear me today. A lot of you in here today could get on track with that because Lyndon was a Democrat. So let me come down your road today. In the 1980s, Ronald Reagan declared war on drugs. And as a result of the declared war on drugs in the United States of America, from 1972 until today, the numbers of mass incarceration have hit record highs in this country for people being incarcerated for nonviolent crimes, resulting in fathers being separated from their families. I know you don't want to hear this, and this isn't stuff that a preacher should be talking about, but just a couple of years ago, right here in Grayson County, a 28-year-old man was sentenced to life in prison for his third conviction on a marijuana violation. Life in prison. I realize you say, Larry, there's probably other mitigating factors there, but yes, we were in a system where 3 strikes and you're out. You remember that? 3 strikes. And so now then, what we've done is our political system. Now, I wanted to bring you those two so you could begin to understand, because here's what a preacher told me. Many years ago, I was pastoring a church, and I was having some issues in that church, and I had a faithful pastor that called me, and he just told me this. He said, Larry, what you need to understand is, he said, I want you to pray about this situation, and he said, I want you to be careful about it. He said, because if you ever draw your sword and declare war, blood is going to be shed. And once blood has been shed, you can't put the sword back in the sheath. It's the same thing when we declared war on poverty, when we declared war on drugs. The result of all of that is poverty is greater now in some circles than it was then. Incarceration is greater now than it's ever been. Do you know that the United States, one of the most developed countries in the world, leads the world in people locked up in prisons? And yet we say that we're the most developed, but we have yet to find a remedy to how to deal with people. And so what we do is we've made our prisons leper colonies. Because in old times they didn't know how to deal with lepers, so they would send them to an island where they were away from everybody else. So now we send people to prison and we put them away. And while they're gone, single mothers struggle to make ends meet. I talked to a mother yesterday. Roseanne and I were having dinner, and this lady came and began to tell us that her husband is being incarcerated and he's got some drug charges. She began to tell us, she said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've got 3 kids at home. I'm working every hour that I can work, and his income now has been taken away. Are you understanding that when we systematically remove... Is everybody okay today? I simply point all of that out to you today, I'm not here to politically pander or fodder or add fodder to a political conversation. I'm simply pointing those things out to wake up your understanding to the fact that there is a spirit alive in our world today whose aim and purpose is to separate people from their fathers. There's an orphan spirit that is in our world today. But I've come to declare to you on this Father's Day 2019 that this was not and is not the original design and intent of God. God never intended for people to be separated from their fathers. God never intended for fathers to walk away from their children. God never intended for children to be born into orphan circumstances. Are you understanding what I'm saying today? And I can show you in the Word of God the original spirit given by God to humanity was a spirit of sonship, not a spirit of orphanship. How can you prove that, Larry? Because watch this. I'm not even going Old Testament. I'm going Luke chapter number 3. Watch. Here's the lineage of Jesus. Luke is talking about the lineage of Jesus, and he said this. Kenan was the son of Enosh. Enosh was the son of Seth. Seth was the son of Adam. Go ahead and read the last line. Come on, somebody. From the very beginning, God did not create anything other than a son. When God put man on earth, Adam was not just God's masterpiece. He was God's son. The Lord loved Adam. The Lord doted on Adam. The Lord desired to be with Adam, not because he was a project, but because he was a son. Every other thing that God created, he simply spoke it into existence. Stay with me today. Every other thing that God created, he spoke it into existence. But with man, God came down and he took the mud of the dirt of the earth in his own hands. And then he began to fashion man in his own image. And he took special care in creating Adam. And in all human experience, there is nothing that can compare to the moment when God breathed life into Adam. In that very moment, a holy Father gave life to humanity for the very first time. So humanity, men and women alike, exist for and by and through God, who is love and who is our Father. Think about it. In that moment of creation, watch this. When Adam came to life, think about this. In that moment of creation, when Adam came to life, the first voice Adam heard was the voice of his father. The first thing that Adam felt when God created him and then he breathed into his nostrils his own breath. And when Adam woke up, the first thing he saw was his father's face. The first thing he heard was his father's voice. The first thing he felt was his father's touch. The first emotion that Adam felt was an emotion that was responsive to the love that the Father was showing to him. Because when God created Adam, when Adam woke up, God said, "It is good. I like this. It's very good. I like this. I love what I have created." I want you to understand, I believe that's why the scripture says, Luke 19, verses 9 and 10, and Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house," because he also is the son of Abraham. This is the story of Zacchaeus. He also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost. I believe that the reason the scripture says there that he's come to seek and save that which was lost. I believe Jesus came for more than just those who were lost. I believe he came to restore that which was lost. And what was lost was the truth that the Father declared for every human on the planet to experience. What he wanted was every human on this planet to experience what Adam had experienced in that first moment of life. I believe with everything that's in me today that the face-to-face Adam encounter is what God intended for you and I to have with him. That's the same face-to-face encounter that the Father wants you and me to encounter when I come to the awakening of the life of God on the inside of me. I believe when Adam woke up, he was overwhelmed with how he felt when he looked into the face of the one who had created him. You'll never make me believe that Adam woke up immediately afraid. You'll never make me believe that Adam immediately woke up wanting to hide. In fact, it was not until Adam's eyes were opened because he disobeyed an instruction that he even ever wanted to hide. The only thing Adam ever wanted to do until his conscience was awakened was to be in the presence of his Father. Because Adam understood, man, there's a connection here. When I begin to wake up to the life of God on the inside of me, I believe that same kind of thing is what God intended for you and I to have. No matter what life has thrown your way this morning, the Father is here declaring for all of you who will hear, you are not orphans. Galatians chapter 4, verse number 6 reads like this, and Jesus said, because you are sons of God, God has sent forth the Spirit of His Son into your hearts, crying out, Abba, Father. No, you've heard it a bunch, and it used to make me uncomfortable because in circles I grew up with, we couldn't refer to God in anything other than these and thous. But the literal translation there of Abba is the word daddy. That's the literal translation. He sent forth the Spirit of His Son into your hearts, whereby we cry, Daddy, Father. I used to think that calling God Daddy was irreverent. But now I realize, man, that's how He wants me to see Him. Not some distant, Holy Father, but an up-close Daddy. I know she's not like, she's not directly mine, but as I stood up here this morning and I held my granddaughter Avery, Lolly reached over to me because Avery put her face right up against mine, and she was just as I was holding her, she just had her face right up against mine, and she wasn't moving it. And she just had it there. And Lolly reached over to me and whispered, she can be so sweet sometimes. And she was just laying right there on me. You know what? When all three of those grandbabies, when they run in my house, there is not one of them that comes in my house and says, man, I hope Pop's not here. If I'm taking a nap, they come and wake me up. They do. They want to be near me. One of them grabs my leg. The other one wants up in my arm. The other one climbs all over me. Why? Because there's something about knowing that you're loved. They don't call me grandfather. They call me Pop. And they run. And Galatians 4:6, the Passion Translation, says it like this, and so that you would know for sure that you are His true children, God released the spirit of sonship into your heart, moving us to cry out intimately, Daddy, you are my true Father. I want to tell you, man, there's an orphan spirit in our world, and an orphan spirit is a spirit of self-will. It's a spirit of self-exaltation. It's a spirit of self-enthronement. It's a spirit of self-deification. It started with Satan himself. Because in heaven, long before Adam and Eve were ever created, in heaven, Lucifer said, I will rather than thy will. And Lucifer was cast out. He no longer had a home. What do we call a child without a home? An orphan. Lucifer was cast out because he had a self-exalting, self-deification, self-willed spirit. And he said, if I can't have a home, I don't want any other created being to have a home. So he unleashed an orphan spirit. He got into Adam and Eve's, he got into the psychology of their mind, and he began to tell them that they weren't really as loved as they thought they were, because why would a loving God withhold anything for them? And how many of you know that sometimes rejection is protection? And God's not trying to keep you from having something. He's trying to keep things from having you. And so sometimes what you think is rejection is really God protecting you. And Satan comes in and he whispers into Adam and Eve, and he unleashes an orphan spirit. And that spirit is still at work in our world today. You can see it in people when people want their own way and want to do things the way that they want to do it. And we live in a land we're not just spiritually, but truly, in reality, in the natural realm, we battle orphan spirits. The orphan spirit can't be cast out. The orphan spirit can't be forced out. The only way that the orphan spirit is rectified, it can only be healed. And healing can only be found in the Father's house. You can't cast out an orphan spirit, because the only way for someone to be healed from feeling as an orphan is if they now feel, I have a father. You can't drive out an orphan spirit, because the only way to make someone feel loved is for them to experience the love of a father. Healing can only happen in the Father's house. And there are some people in this room today, I'm closing, there are some people in this room today who need to find your way home. The Father is waiting there for you. The ultimate purpose of Jesus coming, I know I'm going to mess some of you up, but some of you feel like that the ultimate purpose of Jesus coming was to forgive your sins. That was really not the ultimate purpose of Jesus coming. The ultimate purpose of Jesus coming was to bring us back to the Father. Many of us in this room today, listen to me, many of us are saved, but we are estranged, or we are emotionally untouched by a relationship with the Father. We're saved, but He's the daddy that I hope isn't there when I go home to visit. He's the daddy I view as angry all the time. I mean, I thank you for salvation, but I don't really want to spend any time with you, because my makeup, children learn what they live, and we've been raised in churches where God has been presented, the Father's been presented as angry. Man, I hope somebody's hearing me today. I need to tell you, Father's not mad at you today. Father's not angry at you today. He's not upset with you. There's a story in the Bible, and I don't have time to go through all of it here today, but there's a story in the Bible, Luke chapter 15. You probably know it as the parable of the prodigal son, but I would challenge you. I'm not trying to tear down everything you've always believed, but that heading in your Bible where in Luke 15 it puts a heading there and it says parable of the prodigal son, that was added by the translators. The story of the prodigal son is really not a story, because really the father had two sons, and the story is not about the prodigal son. The story is not about the older son. The real story there is to show you the character of the Father. That's why the story's there, to show you the character of the Father. And in Jewish culture, there was this younger son. Two sons lived in this father's house, and this younger son, you know how the youngest is, they're always spoiled. Two of them sitting back there on the back row. Three of them. No, two of them. How many babies are in here? Come on. It explains a whole lot. Raise your hand again. Can you do a camera swipe? I'm getting for notes for future. Explains a whole lot. How many of you are middle children? That explains a lot too. Make sure you get that on camera. But here's the deal. An older son, a younger son, and this younger son, he comes and he asks he demands, he doesn't really ask, he comes and he demands of his father, I want my inheritance right now. Now you have to understand, Jesus is telling this story to Jewish people, and Jewish people would have had the understanding that in Jewish culture, for a son to go and ask his living father for his inheritance would be the same as telling your father, I wish you were dead. Because the inheritance could only be given to when there was a death. That's how it was supposed to be. And here a son comes and basically tells his father, I wish you were dead. Give me what is rightfully mine. By all rights, the father should have banished that son, should have sent him away. But watch this. Instead, the father divides his inheritance and not only gives to the one that asks, but also lets the older know that other part's yours. You with me? So even when we make dumb choices, God doesn't banish us. The Father doesn't banish us. Why? Because the Father created us with free will. And He loves you. Watch it. Some of you are going to have a hard time believing this. Some of you are going to have a hard time believing this. You look at the things that have gone on in your life, and you want to blame God for all the things that have gone on in your life. But really what God wanted me to send you here and tell you today is that He loves you so much that He created you with a free will, and He will honor your choices even if they're not the best. He'll honor your choices. That's how much He loves you. He could have told the son, the father in the story could have told the son, it's not time, you're just going to have to wait. But no, that's what you want. It's not going to be good for you. But He didn't even give him that speech. He divided his inheritance and He gave it to him. The story goes on. You know the story. The son hits rock bottom. Ends up in a hog pen. That's a bad place for a Jewish boy. Ends up in a hog pen, and as he's sitting about to start eating the same things that the hogs are eating, his mind begins to go back to his house and his home, and all of a sudden, maybe he was 18 when he asked for his inheritance, and maybe he's 24 now, and he realized how much his father has learned in the last 6 years. And his mind begins to go back to his father's house, and not only does his mind begin to go back there to how good it was there, but listen, I find this interesting that the young man begins to remember how well the father treated his hired servants. He said, I'm going to go back to my father's house because he treats his hired help pretty well. Think about, man, I'm trying to help you today. Here's the damage in some of our thought processes. Some of us have hit rock bottom. We know things are better back at the Father's house, but we're still not convinced that He loves us. And so the younger son said, you know what? I'll go back and tell him I'm no longer worthy to be a son. I'll be a servant, and I'll work my way back into favor. Y'all just missed it. A Grace Church would have caught that. People that believe grace would have caught that. People that don't believe grace think the only way for me to go back and enjoy the goodness and the benefits of my father is I can't go back as a son. I've got to go back as the hired help. And the Father is not wanting you to come back as hired help. He's just wanting you to come back. So he said, I'll go back and I'll make my way back. The Bible says, think about this. I don't know why this story moves me so much. But the Father said He makes His way back, and while the Son was a long way off, the Father looked and saw him coming Shelley Jones, you know what that tells me? That every day that that boy was gone, Daddy was looking for him. Every day he got up, and I don't know if this is how it was at their, but he walked past that big picture window in the living room that looked out over his spread and the road coming up to the house, and every day he walked by, is today going to be the day that my son comes home? The father sees him coming in. The Bible says that the father doesn't wait for him to get all the way back to the house, but moved with compassion. And see, you got to understand Jewish culture. Jewish men did not run. Children ran and women ran, but men were too dignified to run. But a dignified man hiked up his skirt and ran out to meet a son who was coming home. With compassion, he fell on him. And the Bible says that the son began to try to make his speech. I'm just here to be a hired hand. And the father said, no. Hey, watch this. This is going to make some people in here mad today. Father said, go get that fatted calf over there. Wealthy families always kept a fatted calf for royal receptions. Y'all didn't hear me. Come here, Stephen Douglas. Let me borrow you, man. Sorry, you're just on the front. Go back there. That's good. Daddy sees a son come. Daddy takes off. And they dance back to the house. My son is home. My son is home. I just want to be a servant, Dad. No. I've been waiting on this day. Go kill the fatted calf. But wait, Dad. Wait. That's for royal receptions, and I'm a sinning son. But the father gives royal receptions to returning sinning sons. But there's another son. Wait a minute, Daddy. No, it wasn't Daddy. It's wait a minute, Father. He's a sinning son. But I've been here with you the entire time. You've never killed a fatted calf for me. So here's the moment of the story. Both sons in this story. Both sons. Even though one ran away and one stayed, both sons were all about the father's stuff. They just weren't about the father. And I came to tell you here today that God made us for relationship, not for stuff. And there's some people in this room today that you're like the prodigal. You're like the young son. You've run off and you've tried everything that you can imagine. And then there are others in this room here today. You have stayed and you've tried to be obedient, but you only tried to be obedient because you wanted the Father's stuff. You didn't really want the Father. So some have left running, and the running left you empty. And some have stayed, and staying has left you angry. But no matter who you are today, whether the runner or the stayer, the Father is saying, come home. Come home. I don't want you to be orphaned. Come home. Come home. Come home. There are people sitting in this room today. Your father, you have no basis for how a father should love you, because your natural father abandoned you, walked away from you, left your family, hasn't checked on you, hasn't called you, doesn't know whether you live or die. And now you come to church and you hear me tell you all the time that there's a father who loves you, but you have a hard time making a connection because you lived, or you learned what you lived. But I'm telling you that old things are passed away. No matter how you were born, that's the benefit of being born again. Because now there's a father who's waiting. There's a father who's waiting. In fact, the moment he sees you make a move toward him, he's going to run toward you. And I don't know, but I just feel like it's possible that there might be some people here today who say, I'm ready to come home. I'm ready to feel the embrace. I'm ready to feel his love. Show me the Father. Show me. I'm loved. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. If you're here this morning, it's who I am. You just need to feel the embrace. It's who I am. Come on, some of you thought you had to earn your way back. You had to work your way back. I'll just come and be a servant. No. He's looking for sons today. He's looking for sons today. I wonder if you're here today and you just need to feel his arms around you today. Is that you? Is that you today? Come home. Come home. Come home. Come home. He's been waiting. He's been looking. He's been looking. You're who he's waiting on today. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. Really searching for answers. I know we're all searching for answers. You provide because you know. I see you coming. 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 It's who you are. It's who you are. And I am loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I am loved by
still as you call me deeper still into love, love, love. And you're a good, good Father. It's who you are, it's who you are, it's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am, it's who I am, it's who I am. And you're a good, good Father. It's who you are, yes it is. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am, it's who I am, it's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are, it's who you are, it's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am, it's who I am, it's who I am. You're a good, good Father.
Father, I pray today. Daddy, we come to you today. I pray that you wrap each one in your arms of love today. I pray that there be that face-to-face encounter for people that are in this room today. That when they feel your breath coming into them, the first face, voice, touch, and emotion they experience will be that of a loving Father. God, I pray today, I pray that men and women battling an orphan mentality, feeling like they have no place to go, feeling like they have no example to look to, I pray that today would be the day that people come home and find you waiting with arms of love. And I thank you for it. Now the Lord bless you. The Lord keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and give you peace. May he go with you in all that you do. And we cover